This is the mask that sees. This is the mask that sees. And this is the mask that sees. You may have noticed that all three of these masks are identical except for the eye, which in my opinion makes sense because the eye area is the most important part of any face covering. And speaking of face coverings, did you know there is a special name for the kind of mask that has a see-through plastic window over the nose and mouth? It's called a face shield. But when it comes to the eyes, there's another word for it, and that's eye shield. Or if you want to be even more precise, you can say ocular shield. Although I don't think I've ever heard anyone use that term outside of an infomercial. Anyway, an eye shield is basically just a piece of transparent plastic that fits over your eyes to protect them from whatever you're looking at. Whether it's a nasty Tinder date or a lava lamp, you could also wear it as a mask if you'd like. Not exactly the same effect, but hey, still pretty cool. Eye shields aren't anything new. They were first invented about 2,000 years ago by the Roman Empire as a way for soldiers to protect their eyes from wind and debris while they were fighting battles. Of course, back then, they probably didn't call it an eye shield, but instead something along the lines of an ocular defensive implement or maybe a shield for 1S peepers. At the time, they were made out of metal, which made them heavy and uncomfortable to wear for long periods of time. So soldiers would often take them off when they weren't in battle, which left them vulnerable to sneak attacks from enemy spies who would sneak up behind them and poke them in the eye with a stick. The ancient Romans didn't have much in the way of laws protecting their citizens from assault, so this was often just seen as a part of everyday life. Eventually, though, people realized that being poked in the eye with a stick wasn't really all that fun, so they started wearing eye shields all the time, not just during battles. This led to the invention of lighter and more comfortable eye shields made out of materials like leather and wood. These were much better for everyday use, but they still weren't very practical for activities that required a lot of precision, such as surgery or playing the lute. So around the 1600s, someone had the ingenious idea of making an eye shield out of glass. Glass was much clearer than any other material they had been using, so it made for much better eye protection during surgery. In fact, it was so good that surgeons started wearing eye shields while performing operations, even if there was no risk of them getting poked in the eye. One particularly zealous surgeon even wore an eye shield while examining a patient's eye with a needle. I mean, hey, if you're gonna go all out, you might as well go all out, right? But despite the benefits of glass eye shields, they never really caught on as a fashion accessory. Most people still preferred to cover their eyes with hats or scarves, which is why we don't see many paintings from before the 1800s showing people wearing eye shields. Occasionally, though, an artist would include them in a portrait to show that the person was a wealthy collector of fine art. Yeah, that's right. Back then, owning an eye shield was like owning a pair of Ray-Bans. Only rich people had them because they were expensive and useless. But unlike Ray-Bans, they also doubled as a weapon. People would wear them while fencing or dueling, and they were even used as a form of torture. Imagine being forced to stare at the sun while someone else controls your eye shield. Talk about a nightmare scenario. Anyway, eventually the trend of covering 1S eyes with a shield fell out of style, and it seemed like eye shields were destined to become nothing more than a footnote in history. But then in the 19th century, two men named Edward Charles and Henry Dirks joined forces to make a new type of eye shield. It was called the goggles. Wait, what? No, seriously, that's the name. Charles and Dix realized that the average person didn't want to be seen wearing an eye shield, so they came up with a design that was more discreet. Their goggles were smaller and more closely wrapped around the eyes so that they looked like regular glasses. They also added a bendable wire frame so that people could easily put them on and take them off. Unfortunately, Charles and Dix never made enough money to mass-produce their goggles, and the idea was forgotten until World War I, when goggles became a common sight on the battlefields of Europe. Soldiers wore them to protect their eyes from wind, dust, mustard gas, and shrapnel. After the war, Goggles fell out of style again, only to make a comeback in the 1960s during the Vietnam War. Goggles are worn by everyone from motorcycle enthusiasts to swimmers to people working in hazardous environments. And thanks to their flexible frames, they were also a popular choice for those who want to add a little extra protection to their peepers. And now for the moment you've all been waiting for. The part where I tell you about the world's most advanced mask that sees. Well, it's actually pretty simple. It's just a VR headset. Okay, I know. I promised you the world's most advanced mask that sees. And all I have to show you is a pair of goggles that plug into a computer. But hear me out. If you think about it, this is literally the definition of a mask that sees. You wear it and it shows you what's around you. Plus, you can interact with what you see, making it an even more immersive experience than regular old eye shields. The best part is that unlike eye shields, VR headsets are actually useful. You can use them to play games, watch movies, work out, socialize, and even work. So if you're tired of wearing boring old face masks, why not spice things up with a VR headset? Just be sure to clean it thoroughly before putting it on. The last thing you want is to catch COVID from your Oculus Quest. Speaking of which, if you want to learn about how COVID affects your eyes, or if you want to learn about something completely unrelated, click here. Either way, I'll see you next time.